Hey everybody, what's going on? It is time for Tao of the Day. I am here talking about the Tao Te Ching. I love the Tao. It really helped me through a lot of rough times in my life, especially as I was exploring and figuring out my own recovery. I got 20 years clean and sober, and the Tao Te Ching really kind of gave me a lot of perspective on what it meant to be a reasonable individual and what it meant to be exposed and exploring this life that we are all here doing. It is. I wanted to do these early in the morning so people can come on and engage. So what I'm asking of you is to come on and pick a number between 1 and 81, and we will explore that. Oh, Catherine, my daily. Thank you so much. So yeah, we are going to explore the Tao. Catherine, how are you doing? Oh, I got it set for an hour again.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally going to use the whole hour.
I'm kicking you out after 15, 20 minutes. But how,
63.
what, 63? Just jump right in. How was your Tao yesterday? Did it resonate at all?
Yeah, it was I every time we pull a number, it was good. And then while I was listening to you, I kept getting the number um 2, and I think that's one of the ones you read.
Yeah, I think we ended up reading
27.
27.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
right.
So good
So yeah,
job is
it's
what I'm
funny.
saying.
I remember one time I was talking in the beginning and no one had come on yet, and I was thinking of a number, and the number that I was going to choose was the number that I think either you or Allison had picked. So I was like, wow, like I was in touch with that. All right, so
Yeah.
63. Act without doing.
53.
53.
53.
Oh, I
Yes.
can't read the wrong one.
Come on, man.
Okay. Okay, the
It's when
great
you
way.
know what's funny is I see you and then a number flashes in my head. That's how come I know the number right away.
No, that's good. I love that. I love, like, we are now connected.
That's
That
right.
is deep. That is deep. The great way is easy, yet people prefer side paths. Be aware when things are out of balance and stay centered within the Tao. When rich speculators prosper while farmers lose their land. When government officials spend money on weapons instead of cures. When the upper class is extravagant and irresponsible while the poor have nowhere to turn. All of this is robbery and chaos. It is not in keeping with the Tao.
Ooh.
So we start here with this, the great way is easy, and that is the Tao, right? The great way of the Tao, the way of our path. Yet people prefer side paths.
Yeah. Well, I also think of it, I talk about intuition all the time, and people prefer to not fully recognize it by calling it something else, instinct, innovation. They kind of sidestep it. And even like
Hmm.
in the business world, they want to they want to sidestep getting into too deep of intuition.
Yeah, and because like that gets into because intuition starts to get into well, we can't really speak on that because it is woo woo, or it is out there.
Yes. The
Yeah,
knowing of the unknowing.
right.
Yeah.
And I look at this as the great way is easy, yet people prefer side paths. This is an interesting story. I was talking with a friend of mine about energy, and like how energy comes from within us, but if we are detached from within us, we have to get energy from other people, right?
Mm.
We have to kind of suck energy from other people so that we can continue to survive and to continue to have energy. And we were talking about the idea that, like, when we are self-regulated, and when we love ourselves deeply and understand ourselves deeply, we can harness and build and continue to perpetuate that energy that is our life force. And yet, there are some people who will look at that and go, well, hold on, I don't know about all that. I'm gonna I can I can gain, whether that be financial, or whether that be business, or whether that be relationship, or whatever, by by lying, or by manipulating, or by doing these other things. Like that seems easier sometimes at first. Of course, over time, we know the easy path is the great way, is the way of true love and honesty within your heart. And yet, people prefer side paths. Those side paths being these routes that aren't that take more energy over time, but may seem, for me, it was drugs and alcohol. The side path was seemed easier at the time. The side path of using drugs and alcohol for me helped me escape what the Great Way was presenting, and the Great Way was presenting a path to love. But I was only going to be able to achieve that love through self examination and self appreciation and all of these other things. And so that's what these two words, these two first lines, kind of really resonate with me. And that's probably because of my addictive past.
Mm-hmm. It also brings up that word crafty again.
Right.
I love
Like
that.
the side path is going to, it's like you are crafty by
Yep.
trying to take that side path, but you're just subverting, or trying to get around, sidestep, like you were talking about, like the Great Way.
Yeah.
Wow, man, how it all fits.
It
Be
all.
aware when things are out of balance, and stay centered within the Tao. That's the next, and I feel like that's very simple thoughts.
It just seems very obvious.
Yeah, and for me, right, like with my drug, alcohol addictions and stuff, like things got out of balance pretty quick. And that's the thing, like if we can stay centered in the Tao, if we can stay centered in that Great Way, yes, things will be, difficult sometimes and easier at other times, but it won't get out of balance. But as
Yeah.
soon as we start to get crafty,
Yeah. Or when we like with, following intuition and in the practice of that, when we get too emotionally wanting, needing, desperate for it to happen, or too much data and checklists and information to make this decision, you begin to overlay that clarity that intuition brings, and it's hard to find until you hose it off, wash it away.
that's right. And that intuition is going to keep that intuition, like for what we're talking about, that is like that Tao, right? That is the whole. That is you connected to all things, because you are being guided by something bigger. You are being guided by you, the bigger thing of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Then we move on to the next stanza of this chapter, or whatever. It says, "When rich speculators prosper while farmers lose their land." And if we go to the bottom, it says, just to kind of like address this, all of this is robbery and chaos. So this is going to refer to robbery and chaos. But the first section of that is when rich speculators prosper and farmers lose their land. And we're looking at that right now, right? Like, how hard is it to be a farmer today? Like
It's been
unless you're on
for,
a big,
for a
like
long
farm.
time, though.
Yeah.
It's
Well, right.
for a very long time. It's been
Yeah.
a farmer. I mean, especially like a traditional farmer versus a, corporate,
Conglomerate.
yeah, conglomerate.
Yeah, farmer of like the egg farmers for McDonald's. Like, I know there's been documentaries on that where the farmers are taking on all the risk, and
Yep.
McDonald's is just taking on all the profit, right? Like,
Yeah.
and they're just, and so that's
It's been
yeah
out of balance for a very, very long time in the,
yeah
yeah, yeah. And I think the great resignation of people going, nah, there's a better way. Thank you so much. I'll just live in a smaller house. I'll do whatever because I don't want to play your reindeer games anymore.
yeah
Is that shift, that amazing shift of people going, nah, I'm good. Thanks.
yeah. Trying to get centered back within the Tao, trying to
Yeah.
bring it back, balance it out, be
Mm-hmm.
aware when things are out of balance. And that's something that you and I have talked about, right? Like, we've been aware for quite some time that things were out of balance, and we, in our own personal lives, have been able to achieve something that is more balanced. And then we're
Mm-hmm.
happy with our choices, right?
Yeah.
Without having to, revert to going out and like telling everybody else to change, right?
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
that continues to be crafty.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that crafty though. That's a
I
great word.
know that's such a good like I remember the first time I read that was years and years ago. I remember like that's such a good way of putting it. People get crafty.
Yeah.
Yeah. When government officials spend money on weapons instead of cures, when the
Mm.
upper class is yeah, let's stay with that. The government on money on weapons instead of cures. Like we've been spending money on weapons for a minute now.
Oh, yeah, I mean, food has been weaponized. I mean,
Right.
let's look at the picture of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, and also, so if we turn this around and we don't talk about it as a global thing, we've been spending money on weapons. We're spending money on entertainment, which takes us away from the Tao, from our intuition. We're spending all of this advertising and money and time and value of ourselves and Facebook and all these other things, which is, throwing the balance off of being in sync with the Tao, with your intuition. And that is, that is value that has
That
been
is, yeah,
against us.
it's a weapon, right?
Yeah.
When you said that, just kind of like, oh my God, that's so like when we look at the individual, if we take the government, and I know we've talked about this before on here, the idea that government can be of the body, right? So
Yeah.
in your body, like you're spending something of value. It doesn't have to be money. You're spending your time, you're spending your attention, you're spending your health and on weapons instead of cures, like things that hurt instead of things that heal,
Mm-hmm.
right? We are like watching The Office over and over again rather than just spending 30 minutes in meditation,
Mm.
quiet, right? Why? Because the entire world is telling us to watch this show so that they can advertise to us.
Yeah, or
And
just
those advertisements are weapons. Go on.
the scrolling on Facebook, or even the idea that you need to buy ads, so you're letting someone else direct you to spend money in something that may be something you don't need to do, or you're
Right.
looking, like I see people buying course after course after course after course after course after course, spending all this money, and nothing's happening the other direction. And to me, that's in a way weaponized, because
Yeah.
it's keeping people in a stagnant state, and they're not moving forward anymore.
Yeah, continually looking outside of themselves for an answer that can only be found inside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Man, when the upper class is extravagant and irresponsible while the poor have nowhere to turn, all of this is robbery and chaos. So this just wraps it all up in this,
I'm like,
and
I think enough said.
yeah, like there is no we've been here for a minute now, and it's just getting even more and more extravagant and irresponsible, right? The outer space is becoming a playground for the ultra rich, and it is that is extravagant and irresponsible.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, some information from Canada News Today that I got is like, wow, really? I knew about what they were going to do. So they're basically taking the unvaccinated and putting them in camps that they have in Saskatchewan.
oh, I did not know that.
They hired retired police to go around, and you can turn your neighbors in for them to be take arrested.
It is not in keeping with the Tao.
No, no, but it really comes to that. Like, that's weaponizing, right? That's
Yeah,
that's weaponizing the, retired police officers. That's weaponizing your community in
right.
relationship. It's, I think when you start to realize a weapon isn't necessarily a bomb or a gun.
No, no,
There's
absolutely.
so much more to it. And when we look at, and think about it, if I've got neighbors and they're weaponizing my value of relationship with someone, if I'm worried someone's going to turn me in for something, and
Yeah,
my
that's
trust in people.
that, and that's something that started with. like that whole idea that's been around for 50 years, keeping up with the Joneses, like that is where this starts. It's like we want to shame you to
Yeah.
do things that you don't want to do, possibly, by making your community feel, empowered to do something. And that causes harm. And I'm a harm reductionist. So like that is something, once again, when we look at, when we read 53, it finishes with all of this is robbery and chaos. You're
Yep.
robbing people of their ability to have relationships. You're
Yep.
robbing people of their ability to prosper as individuals and to have an idea for themselves and to grow. And that's something that I am not, that is something that is not in keeping with the Tao.
Yeah. With the Tao. That's right.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
not. Catherine, it is always such a pleasure, and thank
Oh,
you
I
for
left. You have to
supporting
keep talking
these.
to me.
What's that?
I like 48 minutes left or something. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
yeah.
you're like, look, if it was 15, you'd be getting kicked off right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right,
So
we'll
fun.
see you
Thank
again.
you for the words of adventure.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Bye bye. Okay, that was great. And yes, my timer is set for an hour, but I'm trying to keep everybody down to 15 just because that's the way I wanted to set the timer, and I'm just forgetful. If anybody is out there and wants to pick a number between 1 and 81, I am ready to read another Tao. Once again, if you don't want to come on, that's totally cool, but that means that I'll be picking yet another number. And I think I might pick 2 because Catherine mentioned 2. Oh, we do have somebody. Tammy. I don't know that I've spoken with Tammy before. Let's see. Have I? I may have heard Tammy speak. I don't know that we've spoken. Tammy, how are you?
Hi, Martin John.
Have we spoken?
Yes, you came onto my WhatsApp and shared some of the Dow with us.
Oh, see, I just go around and do that. I knew you looked familiar, but I was like, I don't think I ever invited you on. So I'm really happy to have you on mine.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting topic.
what's that?
Interesting topic.
Yeah, well, the topics always change. So, would you have a number between 1 and 81 that is burning in your soul?
I'm going to do 79.
79. Beautiful. This is fun. This is a great one. My weekly email was kind of about some of this. So, failure is an opportunity. If you blame someone else, there is no end to the blame. Therefore, the master fulfills her own obligations and corrects her own mistakes. She does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others. So that's 79. Let's go through this line by line because it's such a beautiful one. Failure is an opportunity. Talk to me.
Okay. Well, um, failure is an opportunity because it is where we grow. It's how we grow through failure. And that's the opportunity to grow, to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, so beautiful. The email that I sent out that I referenced earlier was because back in 2014, I got diagnosed with MS. I lost about 80% of the motor function on my left side.
Oh,
And a thing that I said over and over is falling down is an opportunity to get up. And I was like, every day I was able to fall down. And every day I had yet another opportunity to get up and learn how to get up. Thing is if you win at everything in your life, you have no opportunity to learn and grow the way failure kind of pushes you to grow. And that's something like not only growing in that which you failed at, but growing at the understanding that failure is just a speck on the screen of everything, and you have so much more. Really, there's this one quote from someone that I interviewed on my podcast, Recover Yourself. He said, we provide. No, that's not the quote. I want to say this. Give me a moment. Oh, I'm losing it. You can ever have that where it just slips out of your mind. You see it go. It's like, oh,
yep.
there's the thought. Yep, there it goes. There it goes. It's getting further away, and I can't. So failure is an opportunity. Um, Man, I thought I had it again. Okay, we're gonna move on. But it was yeah, failure is such a great opportunity to explore your own like relationship to failure, but then
Mm-hmm.
also that which you know quote unquote failed
Mm-hmm.
at. You know, if you blame someone else, there is no end to the blame. Now this
Ooh.
connected to failure as an opportunity. I want to hear what you have to say about that. I'm going to read it again. If you blame someone else, there is no end to the blame.
Well, because you just keep failing, don't you? You know, if that lens is never turned to reflect at oneself, then you never get a chance to take advantage of the opportunity that failure is offering
Bam!
you.
Bam! Look at that. If you're
It's
blaming
offering
someone,
you an
yeah,
opportunity, not the other person. I mean, they can
absolutely.
through you, through observing how you handle the failure, and that's great if and when someone's inspired by your transformation and all of that. But don't count on it because it's about you and your growth.
That's right. And like, and that's the thing. How many people, how many times have we, how many people do we know that just, they just get on the blame, they get on the blame train, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's like everything. And I like to say, you know, like, yeah, okay, you're a victim, but eventually you become a volunteer. So don't get the
Mm-hmm.
wind in your sails too fast. You know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
like as soon as you start blaming, you can just take off and you can just be like, all right, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not my
Well, it's
fault.
so easy to do, though. It's so easy to blame in a society that conditions blame as the norm. You
That's right.
know, we don't honor sitting with our pain and
Mm,
the value of that pain of failure or that pain of neglect or abandonment or abuse. We don't encourage that. We encourage consuming something to fill that void as opposed to sitting with it in order to transform our experience of it. We'll never
girl.
transform the void. The void will be
Yeah,
there, but we can transform our experience of it, but we have to engage it to do that. So, yeah, that's why there's no end. You're just in the void.
that's right. You know,
you just you just stay there. You don't change your experience at all.
that's right. And man, I don't know what it is, but I just keep losing. There was another thing I wanted to say, and it just and as I was gonna say it, like boom, I just saw it like going off into the distance. But that's all right. Like those things just sometimes happen. Therefore, the master fulfills her obligations and corrects her own mistakes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
wonderful things. So this is the Tao Te Ching. I don't know how familiar you are with it. It is 81 chapters. This is one of them. So they can be very short. And the Tao Te Ching is an ancient text that translates roughly to the canon of reason, meaning like the way of reason. This is how you can live a reasonable life. And this is 81 verses about how that works. You know, how can you live a more reasonable life? The nice thing is that this particular translation, and there's a lot of different translations of this text. This translation by Stephen Mitchell, which was done, I believe, in the 90s, there is no segregation between he and she in the original text. It is a neutral, and
Mm-hmm.
so when Stephen Mitchell translates this, he translates it randomly to he and she, and so here the master is referenced as a she, and I always love seeing that because you know I have a very strong feminine side, you know, like feminine energy. I love being a man, but I have a lot of feminine energy, and when I see that, it just makes me feel good because like too often we just consider master man, and I think that like that's something that I just want to kind of point
Mm-hmm.
out because it's so beautiful that you know therefore the master fills her own obligations and corrects her own mistakes, and that is such a beautiful thing, like just to be able to recognize that. So in terms of those lines, and in reference to what we read before, how does that land for you, correcting, like fulfilling your obligations, correcting your own mistakes?
Yeah, they work together. They work together. You really cannot fulfill your obligations without correcting your mistakes.
Yeah.
because obligations, and mistakes are inherent to obligations. There is just a part of them. That's why they're obligatory. You talk about I Ching. If you talk about any system of life, philosophy, astrology, it's always pointing us to those weak points so that we can, what is it, walk on the rice paper before we jump.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's inherent. And so you have to be aware of that with any obligation, whether it's something you absolutely love to do, surfing or whatever, reading or writing, the rewriting, the editing, the finding the next wave so you can hit it better, you get your lefts better, whatever it is, that is a part of it, a quote unquote making mistakes. It's the refinery. We're in this refinery, and the better we can kind of dance with that, I think the better we can just flow with um, not so much the obligations being a burden, but then they become more of a blessing. They become
Right.
more of a blessing, like, wow, I get a chance to travel the world and surf.
Yeah.
Wow, I get a chance to write for millions of people. Wow, I get,
Yeah.
and that's comes from that refinery, that mastery. You're evolving in that mastery. And so everything, like you said, has the yin and the yang.
And here, like I see this, and like that last line, it's not the last line of the verse, but that we have read, and corrects her own mistakes. When we refer to mistakes, we go back to the beginning. Failure is an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to correct your
Mm-hmm.
own mistake. It's an opportunity. Like, therefore, the master fulfills her obligations. Like, she fills her obligations because of, right? Because we start with this therefore. And so failure is an opportunity. If you blame someone, there's no end to the blame. And because of that, because she is not going to blame, she fulfills her own obligations, meaning she takes, for me, she takes responsibility for all that she does.
100%,
And
100%.
then corrects her own mistakes as she recognizes them as mistakes. She's like, "Oh, this is an opportunity for me to grow. I'm not blaming nobody. This is my shit. I'm gonna fucking dig into it, and it's mine, and I get that." And that's so beautiful. She does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others. Now this I like this. But it could get interpreted incorrectly, I think, sometimes. So how do you take this? She does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others.
Well, for me, especially this part of the
Mm-hmm.
entire thing is
Yeah.
highly aspirational. I mean, the whole thing is highly aspirational, right?
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we realize here that we're all on an aspirational journey doing the best that we can. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the best that we can do at any given time. But as far as fulfilling responsibilities and demanding nothing of others, that has its conditions. Everything has its conditions when we are talking about, we're moving out of the space of me being responsible for fulfilling my obligations to me joining my obligations with someone else. And now we're talking about relationship.
Yep.
So now we're talking about a relationship where there are definitely expectations in terms of what has been agreed upon, what are the expectations, and whether or not those are honored. And so then we get into, okay, so if we're talking about a demand that is based on a mutually agreed upon outcome, then I'm just fulfilling my responsibility, my end of a bargain. And
Mm-hmm.
that's totally acceptable under any philosophical or religious situation. It's honoring your word.
Mm.
But if
Yeah.
we're just talking about you know, I'm responsible for fulfilling my obligations. And although other people may be involved, for example, in the selling of my books or in the traveling to do my surfing, I have to deal with people traveling, I have to deal with people and
Mm-hmm.
publishers and that sort of thing, whatever. But ultimately, it is still within that and ecosystems, ultimately my responsibility, absolutely. But like anything in life that you want to do and you want to do well, like we are on this platform having a discussion, it
Hmm.
involves others. And the implied agreement, even between us, is a mutually respective, you know, exchange.
And
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I'm gonna take that just a little. I'm gonna take that from in a little bit different direction because I love your take on it, and I think your take on it is great and can be added to. So when we kind of go back to this idea of what is our own obligation, what are we inherently obliged to do? As far as I see that, we're inherently obliged to follow our heart and love, right? Love ourselves and appreciate and be grateful for this experience that we're having, no matter what the experience is. Like, we are obliged to live our life. Like, that's the one thing that we're obliged to do. And when we come down to this last two lines, she does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others. When you are in a relationship and you have agreed upon things, the first and foremost of those things is that you, my partner, are going to love yourself first, because that is your primary objective. That's your obligation, is to love yourself first. And if I become abusive, the obligation for you to love me has to shift, because you need to love yourself first, even if we have an agreed upon, better or worse scenario.
So you're talking about the unspoken contracts.
Well, I'm speaking about the deepest contract that you have with God, which is you are here to live your life in full as you, with all of the things that you are tasked to do here.
Which is extremely subjective, which is why it's extremely important to be aware of what these unspoken contracts are that we have
That
with
that
ourselves,
that
so that
you
when
get
we
involved with,
engage
yeah.
in relationship with people, we articulate them clearly to avoid as much conflict as possible. Although it's inevitable, like we just said, there are going to be mistakes involved in fulfilling our obligations. And then you add someone else to that equation, it amplifies it. And so those unspoken contracts, I'm glad you touched on that, Martin John, are imperative to being in that space of detachment with people in relationships where I don't expect them to fulfill my unspoken needs, whether they know it or not. That's my job.
Mhm.
It's sometimes appropriate for me to share that with them, and sometimes it's not. It just
Absolutely.
depends.
Yeah. And there's this idea that you are not the same person that you were 10 years ago. So if you're in a 10-year relationship, shit's going to change.
Oh, yeah.
It's
5-year
going to change,
relationship.
right? And it's going to change, and it may change to such a degree.
5 months.
Yeah. I mean, 2 days. A lot can happen in 2 days.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
and that's something that we have to recognize. It's just like, you know what? This agreement is no longer something that I want to agree to. And just communicating that. This is where this line, like, failure is an opportunity. Well, therefore the master fulfills her obligations. Your obligation is to express to your partner, hey, shit's changed. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I am a different person today than I was yesterday. I recognize that, and I want to make sure that as I transition into this new person, like, I continue to love you because you are someone that I love, and that I don't just hide behind my fear of my change and then blame you, because the blame, as we know, will never end.
Well, we know it, Martin John, because that is one of the skill sets of a life coach. A life coach, a good one, and many of us are, help us with that kind of transformational language so
Mm.
that we can instill that kind of rhythm, that kind of flow in our relationships, no matter what happens. Because I know it took me forever to learn that kind of language. I understood it intellectually, and I was cool when I was practicing it by myself, but the moment
Mm.
I was engaged in an energy exchange with someone else, all of my wires got, discombobulated, and I was trying to understand them, and I was like, I lost my footing. And just simple transitional statements like, hey, I know we've been dating for 5 months and it's been going this way, XYZ. And this is what I did in the past. In the past with us, I know up to this point I have XYZ. But going
Yeah.
forward, I realized that ABC is better.
Yeah.
Just simple transitional language that allows people to kind of be with us in that self-loving space.
That's right. That's right. And the more that we can love ourselves, the more easy it becomes to speak. The more easy it becomes to share that. The easier it is to express love at that level.
And have people on our team doing it with us,
Yeah.
which
And
encourages
we
us
don't
to be on their team to do it with
That's right.
them.
And we don't demand it. We say,
Right.
look, this is the team that I'm creating. And if you want to be on my team, you can be. When you're ready to get off my team, I want you to have the best life you can. And I'm going to continue loving you even if you're not on my team because I love. And that's just where it is. What a beautiful number to pick. And I would like this is your Dow for the day, so I would really love like just let that roll around in your head.
Thanks,
If you're
Martin
in
John. Yes,
if you're
great.
interested in getting a link to the if anybody is interested in getting a link to English translations of the Tao Te Ching, reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, and then I'll send it over.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Martin John.
Thank you. Have a great day, Tammy. Okay. Wow. Well, we went through a couple. Do we have a third? I love doing three or four. Just it's so nice to do these. That one was so thick. Man, failure is an opportunity. That was at the top of my email today. So if you get my email, you heard all about how falling down is just an opportunity to get up, as I mentioned earlier, and that's something that's so beautiful. And Tammy and I were talking quite a bit about like relationship and I'm exploring a new relationship right now, and that's something that's really exciting. And being someone that is interested in the Tao, I definitely try to keep it balanced. I definitely try to keep myself open and receptive. And you know, Tammy mentioned like energetic exchange, and energetic exchange is so beautiful and it's honest because you can't hide from that, right? Once you start energetically sharing with somebody, it can become very scary because like they're in there, right? They're like they can swim around in that energy, and that's really that's that brings this like fulfilling your own obligations, your obligation to be you completely. Right? As soon as you start to hide a little bit of you, even if you think that's to be protective, you can really start to discredit who you are. You discredit how much you have to offer. Failure is an opportunity. Fulfill your obligations, correct your mistakes, and you'll demand nothing of others. And the demanding nothing of others for me goes deep into I don't want anything for you other than you to fulfill your obligation to live your life. And if that means being with me or not being with me or um, like wanting to talk to me or not talk to me, none of that matters. I don't want to demand that of anybody. I want you to be able to be you. You have done such a great job being who you are up to this point that I want to be with you. What makes me think that I can do a better job? Right? So many people that want to get in relationships want to be like, great, you're perfect except for, and then they try and change your shit. Well, that's not love. That's not even transaction. I don't even know what that is, right? And so when you know that like you can't blame this person for who they are. Like you love that person. And they're going to continue to change. They're going to continue to change the way they want. And if you're afraid of them changing the way that they want to change, well, where's that coming from? Like why? Why are you afraid? Like, they got here. And they may get away from you, but that's all right. Maybe you're not ready for it. Maybe they're not. Either way, your obligation is always going to come down to you. The relationship still has to come second to you. And if you're fulfilling your obligation to be you, you're not going to hurt your partner. At least not on purpose, maybe. I mean, we can get sensitive. I'm a Cancer, for fuck's sake. Like, I get sensitive, man. This isn't true, but like, you bring me the wrong meal, I'm gonna cry. Like, I am a sensitive fucking son of a bitch. So, but yeah, if anybody's out there and wants to pick a number between 1 and 81, we'll read your Tao for the day, and we'll go through it and see what see what it has. I know Catherine mentioned 2 earlier, and I wanna go ahead and hit 2 up because she mentioned it. It stuck out in my head a little bit, and I don't think I've read 2 yet on the Tao of the day. Oh, and this is a beautiful one. I read something similar to this not long ago, and so this is along the same lines. It's a little longer. Maybe we'll go through it. Maybe we'll just read it. When people see, okay, I'm going to start reading this again. When people see things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise, and she lets them come. Things disappear, and she lets them go. She has, but doesn't possess. Acts, but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. This is the thing, like, the work that you do, are you holding on to it? Or are you going to let it go? Let it live in the space. Let it live in the world as itself. How many parents out there, how many people out there that had significant parental figures in your life? Like, how many of those parents that and are whatever, like, can't let go? How can you forget that you're a parent so that your child can be a person rather than just be your child? I am going to go through this a little bit more. When people see things as beautiful, other things become ugly. That hits home. That hits home right now because there's beauty within me that I hadn't seen. And because I looked at something, I looked at a world, right, that beautiful things weren't addicts. Beautiful things don't have scars. Beautiful things don't have pasts. Beautiful things are just always beautiful. But I realize, and I'm beginning to realize more and more, that I am a beautiful thing because of all those things. Not because I didn't experience those, and I'm seeing the ugliness of things. But that's I don't want beauty and ugly in my life, right? I want things to be. But it's because I had the definition of what was beautiful that made me see myself as ugly. Made me see my world as ugly, my life as ugly, my experience as ugly. Because I had an idea of what was beautiful. And if I can just get rid of that idea of beautiful, then everything is perfect as it is without having to require an explanation or an adverb, right? I think that's what they are. No, it's an adjective because it's describing a noun. Look at me, Fourth grade English. When people see something as good, other things become bad. This is yet another reason why it's really great not to have those sorts of labels like my life is good, my job is good, and all of this sort of thing. And it's so wonderful to be able to step away from the good and the bad of things, right? What is good? What is bad? Like I always like, when I talk to clients and other things like that, I always like to say like, hey, like this might be the right answer today, but it might be the wrong answer tomorrow. So you don't want to just kind of like just have, you don't want to have like, this is why like health really kind of irks me a little bit, like health food. It's just like, lentils are good. Well, not for someone who shouldn't be eating lentils. Like, I don't understand where that comes from, like, and Snickers are bad. I'm like, well, there's probably someone who just finished a marathon or something that probably, like, that's exactly what they need. They need, 12 nuts and a fucking layer of caramel. Like, that is the healthiest thing they can eat right now. Right? Like, we can't just lump all this into one answer, right? Because no, it's not true. Like people say cottage cheese is so good for you. Well, not for someone who's lactose intolerant. Like I don't understand like what the like how do we want to really define something as good or bad when time, we know, changes everything, right? So that which is good is going to eventually be bad. And that's what's so wonderful about just this experience. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. That's the thing. Like, is it far? It's just like, well, it depends on what you think about far. Like, if you only walk 2 blocks and we're going a mile, it's far. But if you travel like from Australia to fucking Chicago 6 times a week, my guess, that's impossible. I think you'd be on a plane the entire time. But if you travel like 6 times a year, even like a mile's not far, right? Like you'll get there. If your commute is 30 miles every day, a mile is not far. High and low depend on each other, right? Like something is high, something is low. Without one, you can't have the other. Before and after follow each other, right? You can't there's a point that you have to define, and then before and after can exist. Like those definitions are, random. Like I mean, I understand like they make sense in the manifestation, but it's not necessary. It's not always necessary to have those definitions. And often, once we have those definitions, our minds can very easily adopt those as facts. Right? As children, we can adopt good and bad as facts, and then we live our life to be good, right? And then we say, okay, well, the ultimate good is that nobody has an abortion. Okay, great, but what about people who need and want them? Well, no, nobody can. Well, but that's just causing harm. And I mentioned earlier in this talk that I am a harm reductionist, and holding on to the idea of good and bad, we get in the argument pretty quickly that good becomes great becomes the enemy of good. We can do so much good if we stopped just trying to reach the ultimate best thing all the time, like ultimate sobriety. If we can let go of the idea of ultimate sobriety and just have people do what they need to do where they are and don't judge them as good or bad or anything, all of a sudden we get the opportunity to respect somebody. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything. I don't think most of us can do that. I don't even know that I can do that. Not that I'm, I mean, I'm pretty great, but either way, acts without doing anything. Like, can you just be present with the moment? And this non-doing thing I like to express. Like, one time I gave someone a ride home, and they said, "Hey, thanks for the ride," and I was just like, "Yeah, it's nothing." And as I drove away, I realized that I did nothing. Right? I acted without doing anything. And I teach without saying anything. Well, recently that's not the case, but I think what I do think is I think my lessons, the lessons that I have for people, get taught through my actions, through just my natural actions. Like, I'm talking about something right now, but I'm inspiring people to do other things. I'm inspiring people, I hope, to be better them without me telling them, you can be a better you. They learn that. They just possess that. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but by welcoming it, and when you notice that something has arisen, when you find that draw, when you find that pull to something, oh, something's arisen, let it come. And then when you feel that kind of push, just like, hey, go back, that's when you can, okay, let's see, is this going to go? I can let it go. And that's all right. That doesn't mean that it ends. It just means it shifts. She has but doesn't possess. This is a great place to talk about relationship, right? You can have a part in a relationship, but you don't possess the person. You don't possess the relationship, right? Like those things are natural living beings. They're changing all the time, and to always be aware of that, so you can be present with it, right? Because you want to let it go. You want to let today go so that tomorrow can come, and tomorrow is going to be a brand new experience. Man, when her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. When we're going to die, we look at the work that we've done, and maybe we lament that we haven't done enough. Maybe we look at it and say, my legacy. The best thing to do when you're on your deathbed is to let go. Even if that's me as an addict, right? Me as an addict, my work was to use. Me as an addict, my work was to be an addict. And when I was ready to leave that behind, I had to just look at it and let it go. I had to forget it. Because if I remembered, this is why AA didn't contribute the most to it did contribute some, but AA didn't contribute the most to my recovery. Because so much of AA is about remembering your work. And it was so important for me to forget my work. The work I did as an addict. The work I did as a hoodlum. Because those things weren't going to serve who I was going to become. So I let that person die. But I didn't perish. That's another thing that the Tao says. It's so important to let things die but not perish and continue. And this last line, that is why it lasts forever. It is in the hearts of the people that you interact with. And they are going to continue passing that on. And you are doing great work. You're doing amazing work. You're beautiful. You're amazing. And you're recovering who you are. And I always like to tell you, that's God. You are God. You are God. And I was once told by a preacher dude, he says to me, he says, well, if you were writing a book and like someone told you something, like you read something in another book, wouldn't you, if you use that line, wouldn't you be plagiarizing? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, what about all of the stuff God tells you? And I said, I already told you I am God. So I'm not plagiarizing. It's me. The fact that you think God is some separate being is not my problem. I am God. And so if God is speaking to me by me expressing that openly, it's not plagiarism. It's intuition, as Catherine mentioned. It's mine. It was gifted to me, and I can use it as I will. God, maybe he's a published author, but no one has been fucking balls enough to say, God on their book. So I don't feel like I'm plagiarizing when I get to speak to you through my open heart, through love. And yeah, I love you. I love you. And you guys have a great day. This is Martin John. This is a Recover Yourself production. And until next time, I want you to keep recovering yourself.